Hey everyone, my name is Tiffany LaCroix. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Fellowship Selection Committee.
And I'm Gail Sims. I'm also on the Fellowship Selection Committee. Thank you for joining us on this video. And we would like to share tips for completing the application to become a Fellow of ARN. So we'd like to give you a brief history of the Fellow program. We started out in 2019. We had 22 applicants, 15 of whom were successful and awarded the Fellow designation. At that time, the applicants were required to have 2 sponsors. The next year, we had 10 applicants, 7 were successful, and 1 sponsor was required to be a fellow, and the second sponsor to be a non-fellow. Then in 2021, we had 3 applicants. All were successful, and 1 of the sponsors need to be a fellow and the second a non-fellow. But we, as a committee, decided to create a rubric. This was created to help the applicants see if they were really ready to apply before they spent their money and time in that process. You might be wondering why we had this downward trend. Well, over the course of the 3-year cycle, the measurement criteria was refined to be more clear for the applicants. We have asked sponsors to take a more active role in the application process to help someone determine if they're ready. We don't want to see people that are not qualified to spending their money and time and not being successful. We want to give assistance as needed and support them. So we thought that some of this downward trend might have been people were not applying because they didn't really feel like they were ready and they needed to do some more work before applying, which was fine. Was this the only reason? Well, that's a good question. The committee does plan to do a survey later on this year, and we're going to survey 2 groups. We're going to send out to people who are looking at the application, but that didn't submit yet, to find out why, and then to fellows who didn't sponsor yet in 2020 or 2021 and found out why they aren't sponsoring someone. In the meantime, we're trying to encourage more applicants for 2021 and have a process that leads to more qualified candidates. So we'd like to look at the application process with you here. It can be viewed on the ARN website, and your application is an opportunity to really showcase your accomplishments. Sponsors are encouraged to review the entire application with the individual. And so now we're going to take a closer look at each section. So the first step is the introduction, just expressing that you're interested in applying. Then we're going to look at the criteria for selection and reviewing the list of requirements. You have to be a member in good standing, having an outstanding contribution to ARN, and a willingness to commit. And you have to have been an ARN member for at least 5 years or more. So if you meet all of those requirements, hitting the yes button to continue. If not, then having a conversation between the applicant and sponsor is the next order to determine what to do to qualify in the future. So let's look at the selection process. One thing you have to look at is what's the deadline and do I have sufficient time to get ready for it this year? It has to be fully complete before submitting because incomplete applications are not able to be reviewed. The ARN office and the selection committee will not notify applicants of an incomplete packet, and they'll not be able to accept any revisions. So it's important to get it right the first time around. So let's go to the requirements. Next, you have to identify 2 sponsors, finding someone who is a fellow and then a non-fellow ARN member. So the list of fellows is on the ARN website? Has the applicant written the statement of intent? And also, has the applicant completed the letter of commitment? We'll talk about both of these later. And having a current CV to submit is very important. And the final step would be submitting your processing fee when all those pieces are in place. So the applicant information provides the demographics and then links also to the chapter membership. ARN involvement is the real nuts and bolts of this process. So be sure to read the directions very carefully. And this means that you should be very specific about what things you've done in your past, giving some examples and details, such as serving in a specific committee as chairperson or member, how many people were involved, what type of tasks were embarked upon, and then possibly recruiting members, mentoring in the chapter, and making sure that you're consistently involved over the 5-year period. So look at the rubric for these. That's what it's intended to help you with. So looking at the CV, you can plug in your information into the application and make sure that things are matching between your CV and the application. So more information can always be added at the bottom of this section to really expound on your experience. So let's look at this rubric we've been talking about. So here it is, and showing what, for example, the ARN national and or chapter level involvement entails, and then what scoring you would have for the level of involvement that you see that you've been engaged in. And then looking down here at activities belonging to committees, meeting planning, participation in presentations, recruitment, and attending meetings, and any publications or activities you've been involved in. This is a very important section that really showcases your commitment to ARN and the profession. The community non-ARN involvement is a section that you can fill in that shows what things you've been doing outside of ARN in the bigger picture, and the rubric helps you with this as well. So looking at your CV in very much detail, you can use those portions to cut and paste into the application so that you can put all of the activities that you've been involved in on this section. Now we're going to look at the rubric for the community involvement. And so it really helps to give examples. There may be more than just this list alone that you've been involved in, but looking back on your history in ARN, what things really do apply for community involvement, and then what your scoring would be in these categories. Next, we'll look at publications and research. So in this category, you can put more details about your contributions to ARN and the rehabilitation global scale. And there's opportunity to add more information in here as well. The rubric, there's no separate rubric for publication and research. These are further delineations of your contributions, and they will add weight to your scoring. There we go.
All right. So when we're looking at honors, awards, and recognitions, this is really an opportunity to show others how much that you're recognized, taking in consideration how you've made that impact, and being visible and involved is a part of being that leader. So we want to see that person and how they've led by an example. So again, here's how the application would be demonstrated to be filled out. And of course, we would hope that your CV would be very detailed and include these things. So again, if your CV is detailed, you can choose to use this section and just, reference your CV and fill out each part of it. Or you can feel comfortable with knowing that that is indicated. I really encourage everyone, though, to ensure that you're covering every element that's asked here for the honors and awards recognition to really be demonstrated in your CV if you choose to do it that way. So here's what the rubric looks like. Honors, awards, and recognitions conferred by ARN or other associations. It could be from your employment, your community, or related to rehabilitation or nursing in general. And just to kind of go through again how the scores go. The highest score is 2, and you can see very clearly here, it lists a minimum requirement for each score. So make sure that you're looking at the scores, because your rubric works in a total score to be granted the fellowship. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself and going for the highest score possible. Some of these are time limited and some are not. In this case, it's not time limited. Okay, so next we would want to see the quality of impact. So in this section, this is pretty much the heart of the application. Your CV and applications have told us the things that you've done, all your accomplishments. But in this section, it's really going to tell us what those things mean and the meaning behind your work. So we really encourage you not to simply repeat what is in your CV. We're going to have a copy of your CV and access to that. We want to hear why your efforts have mattered. So how you've impacted ARN and your colleagues and rehabilitation nursing, and how this impact has been seen and how others have been affected by this. So for your quality of impact on the application, you'll want to, again, describe the results of all your time and energy and those contributions to the activities that you've been involved with, particularly around those that have advanced ARN, rehabilitation, and nursing overall. Use this as an opportunity to provide personal meaning about how you have made a difference. You are giving the opportunity here to write a summary. That summary needs to be 500 words or less, and what you consider to be the most outstanding contributions to rehabilitation nursing. So again, here's the rubric for showing quality of impact. Here you want to describe the outcomes of activities and contributions showing this impact on the specialty practice of rehabilitation, nursing, and the goals of ARN. So again, they may be related to service, research, publication, presentation, education, administration, consultation, advocacy, or practice. There is no requirement for how long any of this impact may last, but there should be a pattern of sustainability of activities over time with this impact. So you can see the scores here are 4, 2, and 0, and there is a time sustainability that the committee will be looking for. Next, we have a piece of the application that's asking for a letter of commitment. This application asks for the applicant to agree to accept the responsibilities of the fellow status, simply done by checking that you agree and that you understand. And if you do not believe that you will accept future requests for your involvement, then you should reconsider your application. This is an opportunity for you to become more involved with the ARN. Lastly, you'll be able to upload your CV. So now we want to talk a few words to our sponsors. So as Gail had indicated, the application does require sponsors. We were asking for 2, one that's a fellow and one that's a non-fellow. There is a separate link on the ARN webpage for the sponsor, and it's as indicated here. The link is fellowship designation, and then there's simply a fellowship sponsor form to be reviewed and completed. The role of a sponsor is very important. So sponsors may be asked by members to be a sponsor, or a sponsor may seek out members who appear to be qualified and encourage them to apply. Sponsors are strongly encouraged to seek future candidates by working with others to develop their experiences and their skills needed to successfully apply to this program. This process may take years. So we want to keep an eye out for those potential candidates so that we can encourage them and potentially be a sponsor with our working relationships or personal relationships. Sponsors should assist the applicant by reviewing how the applicant has shown their information and how it matches the rubric. Really, they're not only sponsoring how they know and work with this person, but they're also confirming that the application has all the pieces. So they're another eye to also make sure that this application is complete. The sponsor should be comfortable providing coaching when it's needed. If they see that the potential applicant can maybe provide a better description of their work and efforts and take credit for everything that they've done. And the sponsor should know and see clearly how the selection committee will interpret the score and the candidate. So being familiar with the rubric would be very important. We also want to know from the sponsor how you know and have worked possibly with this applicant. This can be stated in terms of the number of years that you've worked or have shared work with them. Some applicants might not have a relationship with a fellow, so you may be asked to fulfill this role for a stranger. And so how you've worked together on an application and how you've gotten to know this person. If you don't have firsthand knowledge of the candidate, but you've listened to their colleagues, maybe you're familiar with their work, that you're knowledgeable through other people, it's really important to be very familiar with a candidate and the work that they have done to some degree. So you will want to, kind of reach out and confirm that you are comfortable vouching for this individual. In order to endorse the applicant, the sponsor really does need to provide a succinct statement about the applicant's contribution to rehabilitation nursing. We already know their CV, we're going to be very familiar with it, and their list of accomplishments shown in their application. So please give us something more, something beyond that, something fresh. Tell us what you think of their contributions and what it means and its impact. Lastly, you are asked to affirm that you have evidence supporting the applicant's qualifications and that information is correct and meets the criteria. Lastly, the sponsor's responsibility. It's very important to guide developing, grooming, and supporting fellows for our future. There are lots of rehabilitation nurses who may not realize that they are qualified and need an outsider to view and kind of nudge them along. Let's encourage them. Our goal is to have at least 10 applicants each year, but we hope that only qualified candidates will apply. After all, we do want people to be successful. If the sponsor had to pay for the application fee, would you think the candidate was ready or that the sponsor was throwing money away? So just making sure that we help the applicant think in those terms too. We want to give feedback. We don't want anyone to waste their time and money. So we really want everybody to be successful and ready to fill out the application when it's time. So we want to thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and we hope that the information was helpful for the applicant and the sponsor. The Fellowship Selection Committee is looking forward to receiving so many applicants this year and growing our fellowship program. Thank you so much again for your participation.